I'm Matt Downing, and welcome to Diving Deep EDU.
Curious conversations with all types of peeps. Encouraging innovation, we are diving deep. Certainly education is what we like to speak. Fervent with dedication, now it is time to teach. Yeah.
The Diving Deep EDU podcast aims to have thought-provoking conversations that help listeners dive deeper into educational practices with a focus on teacher retention, recruitment, and burnout. Subscribe to the Diving Deep EDU podcast newsletter to get more information about this podcast and these topics. A link is in the show notes. Our guest today is Lindsay Donikian. Lindsay is the Executive Vice President of Teacher Growth at Elevate K-12. Lindsay focuses much of the time on teacher shortage, how to retain teachers, and live teaching as a potential solution. Lindsay, thank you so much for joining me on this podcast. I want to start the conversation off by you telling us a little bit more about the work you're doing at Elevate.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, Matthew. So at Elevate K-12, we are thinking differently about the teacher shortage crisis. We are putting live stream teachers into physical classrooms to help schools who are unable to find a teacher within their zip code provide access to excellent education for their students. And how we do that is by recruiting teachers who have left the brick and mortar classroom, but really miss the art of teaching. And so we're enable them to work from home, work remotely on their own schedules, working with students all over the country to provide a great education with this live synchronous online learning.
That's great. It's a different way to innovate and to think about how to sort of solve this problem. Now, there's a couple other, live streaming solutions out there. What makes Elevate unique? What makes them different? What makes, a district looking for a solution and they're debating why would someone go with Elevate?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. I mean, once a district is looking for a teacher, there are a couple different options that they often consider, all of which are ones we've kind of found to be subpar. So many states are reducing certification requirements for teachers, so allowing non-certified teachers to go into the classroom or emergency certifications. They're also looking at bringing in J-1 visa teachers from abroad for short periods of time. And so what we've found is that having a permanent U.S. certified teacher who has experience in the classroom, our teachers have over 13 years of experience, 80% of them have degrees in education. That gets that quality of teacher into the classroom. The second is that we have created our entirely own curriculum. So we have dedicated PhDs working on a curriculum. It's standardized. It's aligned to every state's requirements. So we know that it's very specific, working with the district to get the pacing right for those students. We've also built the only technology custom built for K-12. So we don't use Zoom. We don't use other third-party services. Specifically built the tech that works for classrooms with all of the different enablements that are needed for students and the teacher to interact synchronously throughout the lesson, both verbal as well as through buttons and other kind of emojis. Finally, even though we're online, we have in-person support. There is a classroom coach in the room for students to leverage for any support as needed. It also provides the teacher an extra set of hands in that classroom.
Yeah, those are all needed and, definitely unique and helpful, for that solution. Now, as we think about online teaching, or like live online teaching, like Elevate is doing, and you have the in-person teaching, right? You have these two different models. In what ways for Elevate do you have to train them to teach in that online model? Like, what are some important characteristics that you really have to help your online teachers at Elevate to be able to deliver those lessons?
That's a great question because you're right, the quality teaching does look different, live stream versus in person. So the first thing we do is actually up front during our screening process of teachers. Only about 10% of our applicants are accepted into our program. We do an assessment of every teacher who applies to work with Elevate, looking for exactly that. Do they have what it takes to be a live stream teacher? There are different, modalities. We're really looking for someone who's tech savvy, who knows how to use different functions within the capabilities given to them, We're looking for someone who's really energetic, who knows when to pause, how to call on students, how to create engagement in that classroom through the screens, as well as someone who's able to recognize different types of participation. So whether it's a private chat, raising your hand online, or actually raising it in the room. So we both screen for that. And then once teachers are contracted with Elevate, we go through a robust training program. They know what good looks like. They get to practice. They get to see videos of other excellent teachers providing this instruction, so that really kind of honed in on this particular type of teaching.
And what does good online live teaching look like? Like, there's a lot of stuff that's going on out there. There's many different ways that people are doing this live online teaching. What does good live teaching look like?
It's a great question. I think I like the verb you used of look, because it's a lot of noticing that the students are engaged, that they're paying attention. Their heads are up, hands are raised. They're answering questions back to the teacher. So that's one way. We're just looking at the engagement of the classroom. Are the students enjoying it? Is it an interactive experience? And then the second part is on student outcomes. What do they actually learn from it? From most districts, it does come down to state or national assessments. And so we do look at how our students do on those tests. So, that matters. It's not, you have to both enjoy the class as well as learn something from it and be able to recite that back in an examination period.
Yeah. And what does bad, like online live teaching look like? Because there's some of that too. What would be an example that you would be like, oh no, we don't want that at Elevate?
I mean, we generally, anything that's asynchronous. So credit recovery courses that are asynchronous, where the students are not together. So, I don't think many people are eager to go back to where we were a couple of years ago, where everyone was at home, various devices, hard to log in, technical issues. Just being together in the classroom means a lot for the students. It makes sure there's consistency in the teachers. And then in terms of just once those two basics are there, you're looking for that engagement. A lecture is very hard to pull off, online synchronously. You're really looking for someone who really knows how to pause, take questions, quiz the students, find reactions, can kind of take those mental breaks when we're not just staring at a screen watching someone.
Yeah, and lectures are hard for kids to take in person as well.
That's true.
But the teacher in person, can maybe yell at people to sort of appease them and keep them seemingly paying attention. But anyway, so you also spend a lot of time thinking about teacher shortages and retention, because that issue, around our country is connected to the problem that Elevate's trying to solve. So I wanted to talk about that a little bit. As we think about teacher shortages and retention, what do you think is causing teachers to leave the physical classroom?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think it really sums up into two things. They don't feel valued for their skills or their experience. And so they've been told by state legislatures that anyone can do their jobs. These emergency certs are granted without a teaching degree, without the classroom experience. They can't control their schedules. So much of the working world has gone to at least some hybrid model, and teachers haven't had that luxury. And it's not even just the classroom schedule, but they're burdened by meetings. They have behavior management. They have lunch duty, bus time. They don't have as much time for professional development as they would like. So there's too much admin time, not enough time actually getting better at teaching. I feel like they lack support. They may not have the right lessons plans. The curriculum isn't tailored. The enabling technology or learning tools isn't made available. Consistency. And then despite all of that, they're held accountable to standardized test scores, over which at some point they sometimes have very little control. They're dealt a set of cards and then evaluated against that. And that can really lead to burnout and disillusionment with teaching. What
can schools do to make teachers feel more valued?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's really ensuring that the teachers have a voice, that they are given the leeway needed to do their jobs well, what their jobs are teaching. It's not parenting. It's not, administrative. There are other the right people should be doing those kinds of roles so that you can focus on the teaching, really support the teachers as they're the ones kind of day-to-day front lines in the classroom. They know what's up with their students. They know what the students need, giving them that space, holding them accountable, but with the right backing and resources to do so.
Yeah, I have this debate with people like recently thinking about the main reasons why people are leaving the classroom. Is it this idea of being valued, or is it the idea of sort of bad pay, right? Maybe it's both. But like, how do you interact with those two like big aspects? On one side, you have like, the compensation isn't there for the level of education, level of experience, the amount that is done on a day-to-day. And as you've pointed out, the additional things that are required of a teacher. And then you have the value aspect that you pointed out really well, like they're not elevated, they're not respected, and they feel that. And one of the things you pointed out is very true. Like having emergency cert people come into a building does devalue the profession 100%. Whether those administrators or the legislature wants to acknowledge that, there's a diminishing of the value of a teacher when you just allow someone to get a cert that easily, even if it's needed, whatever, at this time. And I put needed in quotes because there's ways to solve that. But how do you interact with those two, like the idea of pay versus the idea of value and the impact on the teacher shortages and retention?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. I mean, pay is inextricably linked with, feeling value.
Yeah.
Across the country, we've seen, cost of housing has risen dramatically, in a lot of communities. It's harder for teachers to live near the schools where they want to teach in or have been teaching in. They're being asked to do more with less. It's fairly well known how much teachers generally spend out of pocket to buy supplies for their classroom. And that adds up. And it adds up year over year. You have teachers going without contracts maybe, or contracts that were signed, before inflation took off the way it did.
True.
And so just trying to keep up with that, watching, peers in kind of the corporate world or in, private areas, being able to accept, higher pay rates and them getting kind of stuck, watching other public employees get more money than they do. It adds up. So to me, I speak as one person. It could be the straw that breaks the camel's back, but it's an important component. But it's not everything. And I think most teachers would agree that it's not just the pay.
Yeah.
It's the combination, the evaluation.
Yeah, I read one report recently that said teaching right now is at the all-time low of parents suggesting or encouraging their kids to become a teacher. So again, that gets into the value. Like it's not a respected profession that it was 50, 60 years ago. It's been on a steady decline and it's at the lowest point it's ever been. And that value, that respect, diminishing it, has an impact on, what someone's going to do when they're deciding to go for a degree or for their profession. Now, you have a number of Elevate teachers, and I want you to think about, right? I don't want any names out there, but I'm just looking for like specifics. Like as you talk to different Elevate teachers, as you're involved in the hiring process, what are some reasons that some of your teachers have left the physical classroom and have joined the virtual Elevate classroom?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, there's a lot of personal reasons, but the number one that comes up is flexibility. And that can mean different things to different teachers. Yeah. In some cases, it's geographic flexibility. A lot of people moved around over the past 2 years to either be closer to family or farther from family. People moved off the grid. We have, van life teachers, but that ability to kind of untether yourself from needing to show up to a classroom 5 days a week, 10 months a year, within a reasonable commuting distance made a big difference. I think the other one was flexibility with schedules. People have had a bear of a time with childcare, with elder care, just having that flexibility to work from home, work remotely, pick your own schedule was very appealing. Speaking kind of other crises that we have in this country, those two would probably be next in line. And that does affect our teacher population sometimes disproportionately.
Yeah. So with that flexibility, like what does that look like for an Elevate teacher as opposed to a classroom teacher? Now, most of the listeners are educators, right? Or they're connected to education. So they know, right? An elementary teacher's there at 8:15 until 3:30, right? They can't leave that building. They're not, they'll be lucky if they get like a 15-minute lunch. So talk to me a little bit about what that flexibility looks like at Elevate compared to, what a teacher's used to enjoying on their regular workday.
Yeah. So at Elevate, the teachers they're in full control of their schedules. How it works is once we have a teacher's kind of certification and eligibility for types of classes they can teach, we'll present them with a list of opportunities. And so, for example, if you're a math teacher, we will say, these are the math classes we have open that match the grades or the states you're certified in. Some of them are in the morning, some of them in the afternoon, different grades. Sometimes it's the same class, 3 periods, different classes. Sometimes it's 1 period per school. And the teachers can mix and match. So we have some teachers who are working pretty full days. They work from 8 to 4,
and what does that
across
look
3
like?
different school districts. So they may teach at a high school calculus class in Iowa from 8 to 9, 9 to 10, 10 to 11. Maybe they enforce themselves to take a break, and then in the afternoon they're teaching at a New Jersey school from 12:30 to 3.
Oh wow, okay.
So those are the teachers who really want to kind of recreate a schedule. But you'll notice there they get to create it, and they don't have any. There's no meetings scheduled within that time. They are paid for prep time, so we bake that into ensuring that they're ready for those classes.
Okay.
We have other teachers who teach just 2 hours a day, and that's what works for them. And while the kids in preschool or after someone's gone to school or whatnot. So it really depends. What we're looking for is we want to find full utilization of whatever hours the teacher wants to work. That's how we measure success.
That's really powerful, putting them in charge of their schedule, right? They're not, under the rigid structure of a school, but they could create something that could work for them, like you pointed out, whether it's childcare or caring for a parent, or they don't want to work that much, right? They have other things that they want to do, and that gives them the options. And that's really helpful. And thanks for explaining that, because I don't think that's something I would have connected as one of the first 2, like, main reasons why someone would work for Elevate. Like, the flexibility portion wouldn't have come to the surface. But as you were speaking, I'm like, yes, that makes total sense. Now, it did resonate with me that, a lot of people, you said during COVID, moved away from family. I should have really looked into that, during COVID. I could have moved away, got like a 1-bedroom, got like a studio apartment, and, just taught. And then my family could have lived on the other side of the country, but that wouldn't have been good. So tell me, like, one more reason. Flexibility was really powerful, and I appreciate you explaining that and really bringing that to life. Like, give us one more reason why teachers are leaving the classroom and coming to Elevate. And I know these aren't like, like, you don't have a database and you're not bringing up numbers, but just like off the top of your head, like what's another major reason?
I mean, another one, this is a little bit of a lightning rod, is curriculum and politics. Teachers are, they're not immune to the quote unquote culture wars going on right now. In some cases, they're smack in the middle of it. And they live in the communities too. They have opinions on what should be taught or what shouldn't be taught. And so Elevate can take a little bit more of a dispassionate view. We align to state certification, state alignment of curriculums, but it's not as in your face, and it's certainly not, we don't ask the teachers to take stands. And so I think some teachers have, probably a minority, but some have burned out from those conversations that, we frequently go online or, the message boards, discussion boards. They don't want to be a punching bag.
Yeah, no, that's very true. Episode 52, that was the reason why Nick Covington left the teaching profession. It was solely political. Like, he loved teaching. He actually didn't really want flexibility. It was the political aspect of the school building that he could not take anymore, and that drove him out of the classroom. And so that's a pertinent reason, and that's another one that didn't come, for me, but it's there. And like you're pointing out, it's growing in number. So thanks for explaining that. Thanks for giving a couple examples. So teachers are leaving the classroom, right? And it has an array of consequences. And we're talking about, some of those right now. But what are some of the unexpected consequences of teachers leaving the classroom?
Oh, that's a great question. I mean, I think it's a bit of a vicious cycle. Like, I mean, we see this even in anyone's profession. When coworkers leave, there's the people wondering, should I have left? Am I still here? And so it's not it's not great for morale when you have teacher shortages. As you mentioned, the person next door is an uncertified emergency sub.
Yeah.
that doesn't generally motivate the great teachers to stay and really get better. They kind of wonder, geez, did I make a mistake in staying? So unfortunately, we do tend to see the teacher shortages are clustered. And so once you kind of hit that tipping point, it really can be a painful slide whether a specific school or within a district. So even for the students who might be left with the teacher, if that teacher is 1 foot out the door, kind of looking over their shoulder, it's unlikely they're getting the best education they could either.
Yeah, and I've seen that play out in a couple districts that I have friends at and that I've been kind of observing. So we've been talking about a lot of different aspects of this problem, and I really appreciate your insight. And we started off, with you giving us some insight into Elevate, and then we were, having a discussion about the teacher shortage and retention, and you were able to bring insight from your experience and your work at Elevate into that conversation. So I want to circle it back to Elevate a little bit, and I want to think about how can Elevate help solve this problem that we're facing. And I also want to point out that it's different regions of the country are facing it in different ways. So it's not a universal problem across the country, and different communities have a harder time facing this problem, and some communities don't see this as a problem. But how can Elevate help solve the teacher retention shortage, sort of that problem that some districts are facing?
Yeah, I mean, we partner with districts across 30 different states in the United States. What we do is we're a full service package. We come in, we provide the teacher, we provide the curriculum, and we provide all the technology to get set up. For some districts, we're working with them over the summer to get ready for elective classes that they may not be able to find a teacher for, or even those core subjects like math and ELA. In addition, when a science teacher leaves in mid-October, that's a really tough time for schools to find one. And so we can plug in Elevate pretty quickly with the right teacher ready to go for the students. We take care of all of the teacher pay, all of the admin, the training, the curriculum. We can hit the ground running and make sure those students are starting day one with a teacher, or very little length of time between their old teacher leaving and us coming in. And we work closely with the district administration, with the classroom coaches in the room to really kind of embed ourselves in the school community. We want it to be a great experience for the teachers, for the students, that they're learning, plugging in, to their grading systems and ensuring that they're, sitting for their standardized tests. All of that's required of everyone else. We hold ourselves to the same standard.
One way that I see Elevate solving this problem is within a school. You could have a sub, right, within the classroom, and that sub, I've seen some amazing subs, like going into that classroom. They have like amazing classroom management. They can move around, but that sub is going from room to room to room, either all day or a different room every day of the week. They're not prepping for the lesson. They don't know what's going on when we're talking about a secondary classroom. So like, I was thinking about, a really solid solution could be turn that sub and keep them in that same classroom every day. And then and they're that coach. And then you have Elevate streaming in like live teaching, following, a curriculum that's, rooted in the Common Core. And then, or, if a state doesn't have Common Core, I know like Texas and so forth, or the state standards. And then those kids are getting high level instruction, but the sub is there to manage. And a lot of the subs are amazing relationally. Like that's why they're there. They're very outgoing. They want to interact with kids, but they can't do the teaching. Is that like I know you've spoken to that solution, but is that a solution that a lot of districts are using Elevate?
In some cases, yeah. So the best classroom coaches we found are ones who have deep relationships within the district. So some have pulled in retired teachers.
Yeah, that would be
good. Some have pulled in student teachers, long-term subs, as you mentioned. So it really can become a great team effort with the certified teacher through Elevate, with the real curriculum, and then the student support from the classroom coach, who can really be the liaison to the students and the school itself. That's where we found the most success, is when it's someone who's not just hired for Elevate, but really knows that district and that school very well.
It is time for the final word. What would you like to say to close out this podcast?
Yeah, I think all I could say is just think differently. There's a lot of different ways to tackle the teacher shortage crisis. And and lowering the standard seems to be the default. And I would just urge districts to, think creatively. There's a lot we've learned over the past few years in terms of remote learning. It's come a long way since 2020. Yeah. And, really have to kind of think outside the box, and not just for teacher shortage, but just for new classes altogether. You can use Elevate to offer a brand new foreign language that, hasn't been offered before. You only need a handful of students to pool together to make that work. So, more and more districts are finding that this is a great solution for those kind of problems, not just subbing in the teacher who they can't find. And so, again, urge you everyone to think differently.
Before we end, who do you want to give a shout out to?
I want to shout out to our Elevate teachers. We've got so many of them working all across the country. They do an amazing job. We get so much kudos from our students. Some of them drive to meet their students in person from time to time. I'm so proud to work for them, and we wouldn't be here without them. So thank you.
Lindsay, thank you so much for joining me on this podcast and all of your insight. Listeners, thank you for joining us on the Diving Deep EDU podcast. If you liked this episode, subscribe, rate, review, and share it out. Until next time.
Wow, it's time to reflect. That's astounding. You've been checking out the podcast from Matthew Downing. Hope you like diving deep like a scuba diver. And the show provoked hope, that's our true desire.